Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient.
Hey, there's something that we talk about a little bit on today's episode with Jessica that I wanted to go into a little bit more. One of the things that I live by really is action being greater than fear. And as I say, Jessica mentions how action is important for her today. I've created some t-shirts available on Brushfire that have that slogan on there. They're really cool, and it's just nice to have a reminder. They're available on my website if you're interested. Also, I wanted to remind everyone to please go ahead and email me at resilientpodcastmail@gmail.com if you have any stories you want to add or comments or questions. I'm always here for you. Thanks so much. Hi, we want to welcome Jessica Stancil to the program. Jessica is someone I met who also has an autoimmune disease, and not only is she fascinating, but she's a good person to kick off our autoimmune and chronic illness awareness series. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Jessica to introduce herself, and can I have you give the audience a short bio about who you are and what you do?
Hi, yes, thank you so much for having me. So, I am an autoimmune lifestyle coach. And so basically, I serve as kind of the missing link between a doctor's office and really daily life for someone who's suffering with autoimmune or chronic illness. And I really just I help people who are struggling and really learning. It's all about learning to cope with this new reality and master a new lifestyle because that's definitely needed once you're dealing with these conditions. And
Mm-hmm.
then the last part is really, I would say, empowering them to live vibrantly and really take control of their lives and remember that life goes on. You can have a full life. It just will look different than it did pre diagnosis. And even if you haven't been diagnosed and you're suffering with the symptoms of autoimmunity or other chronic illness.
Gosh, that's so needed. I think that describing yourself as a missing link is perfect because so many of us are not really wanting to talk about it because it seems so odd, to have an illness. Oftentimes they're invisible. And for me, it was really hard to admit that I had one, let alone know how to navigate it. So how did you get started?
Yeah. So kind of on the topic of a missing link. So um, I started experiencing my, I guess, more serious autoimmune conditions. What I mean by that is I was kind of having them minimally when I was
Mhm,
younger, but
mhm,
for the large part, I was ignoring them. And then really they got to be so bad that I couldn't ignore them any longer.
mhm,
So I went to multiple doctors and I felt supported medically. I was getting the right treatment. I was on a good regimen in
mhm,
terms of supplements and
mhm,
getting lab testing done and whatnot. But funny because it's the same type of thing as when you would go to school. A teacher's talking to you, you feel so confident and you're like, I got this. And then you walk out of the doctor's office and you're like, wait a minute. Now I actually have to do these things. I have to live my life. And it's, in a perfect world, I think anyone suffering with any type of health problem, you want to prioritize your health in a way that the rest of your life would just stop. Life would just revolve around this new reality.
mhm.
And that's just not the case. And unfortunately, I've really found that our daily lives are so hectic that even people with good health don't have the basics. They don't have the foundations for everlasting good health. And I do think that's why our population is becoming more and more what I would classify as unhealthy. And so I think it's really about, getting back to the basics. And for people like us who are struggling with health problems and our bodies are essentially turning against us in a
Hmm.
way,
Hmm.
unfortunately, that's, how I kind of look at it.
Yes.
It's really important to make sure your lifestyle is one that supports good health, but that's so much more than just living with your conditions. Like it's taking control of your life and living in a way that your health is stable or as stable as it can be, but also being happy, enjoying life, like continuing on with your life because unfortunately life does not stop. And so we can continue on and we can live vibrantly with our conditions.
What would be the first thing that you would say to someone who's looking to change, who has a chronic condition and wants to live in a healthier and happier way? How would you start that process with them?
So, and it's funny that you say, wants to change because unfortunately I find a lot of people are kind of stuck in old ways,
Hmm.
even when they have chronic illnesses.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people come to me and they say, I'm ready to make a change. What do I need to do?
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I found that our society is obsessed with the makeover. We are obsessed with the big, drastic changes.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, when you don't have good health, you want to trick your body into changing. It's so much more than just the physical body. You want to
Hmm.
trick your emotions, your mental capacity, everything into changing.
Hmm.
So the first thing that I really encourage people to do, it's so hard to not get ahead of ourselves, but really it's making small changes that are going to last the longest.
Hmm.
So if you can really create a solid structure of small changes,
Hmm.
you will be so much more successful in creating that long lasting change than if you were to all of a sudden jump in, switch it 180 degrees
Hmm.
and just try to, live this brand new lifestyle that is totally new to you. So the first thing I tell people is really like get in the mindset of making the smallest change you possibly can, that it's so small that it's your mind is like, well, of course I can do this. This is easy. That's
Hmm.
what we want. We want to make it easy on ourselves.
Wow, that's so refreshing too, because like you say, it's always the easy answer. And unfortunately, with autoimmune conditions and chronic conditions, there's never an easy answer. It's not just a one-step process
Right.
or a magic pill, which would be so great. I like that idea
Wouldn't it though?
yeah, that would be great. But I think that your approach has real value to people, and I wish that it was more widespread. I had never known that there were people who were coaches for people who had autoimmune conditions, so I'm pretty excited about it. Can I ask?
Yeah. And, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry
I'm
about that.
sorry. I have a lag, so sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just going to say, I do think it's kind of a new approach
Mhm.
to this space. I don't think in the past, with traditional medicine, it there wasn't much of a focus on creating a good foundation in the first place.
Mhm.
And then even, I used a lot of alternative medicine
Mhm.
on my healing journey.
Mhm.
And I think even with that, I got lucky, I would say, with my doctor.
Mhm.
She really was the one who exposed me to even more alternative styles like meditation and slowing down, being mindful.
Mhm.
But I really, like, I always felt like, well, I need another doctor for that because I don't, what it came down to ultimately
Mhm.
was you only have enough time in a day.
Mhm.
When you are working, if you can work, because a lot of people with suffering with these conditions aren't able to work. But if
Mhm.
you are able to work, you have your job, you have everything you need to take care of at home, then you're already seeing doctors, and then you're getting your lab tests. I was just finding that I didn't have time to learn how to meditate. And that sounds so silly, but I was someone that 5, 6 years ago never would have thought I would be someone that would meditate every day. It just was not my personality. I liked to be running around at 100 miles an hour. I didn't like to sit there with my thoughts. And
Mhm.
so when my doctor actually recommended meditation, I was like, I don't even know what that means. And it's so silly, but I spent a couple hours figuring out, how do I meditate? Do I listen to someone? Do I sit alone with my thoughts? Like, what is meditation? So I think, there is definitely this missing link just in the space in general. We have the support, we have nutritionists, so we have the support for food. We have doctors that specialize now in like just your testing. Then we have these kind of like functional medicine doctors who can help with the testing, but they're dealing with your diagnosis, they're putting you in a good regimen. So there's all this support in those areas, but no one is holding you accountable to making sure you're enjoying your life. And that is huge. Like, that is such a big component of healing. It's just
What
feeling
style of
good in
meditation
all
did
areas,
you?
not just your body.
Mm. I think that also is something that is just incredibly important. I think that everyone's focused on the one part, or everyone's very
Yes,
specific, and it's a very holistic approach to really try and think about how you're feeling about it, not just am I getting better or am I not getting better or am I in a holding pattern, but how are you doing internally about that. Finding a way to change that
definitely.
and make you feel as good as you can about what's going on with your life at the moment is something everyone can use.
Yeah,
So
I believe so.
what other kinds of alternatives have you gone through? What kinds of things do you recommend besides meditation? Things like breath
So
work?
I really have, yeah. So I've really incorporated a complete, what I would call like mindful lifestyle. My lifestyle now, and mind you, this was many small changes to get here. So I want to remind everyone of that, because I think it's easy to see when someone's changed their lifestyle to get into the mindset of, oh, I can do that. I can do that in a month. I can do that in even a year. This took me years to get to this place of completely changing my lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
But now I I focus on kind of a multitude of things. I'll kind of go through a typical week for me, and then we can talk about some of the practices I use on a more occasional basis.
Okay.
So, every single day for me includes self care of all types. This includes gratitude, journaling, meditation, a little bit of breath work. And what I mean by breath work here is just connecting to your breath, not the intense version of what most people think of breath work, just connecting to your breath, centering yourself, and just really reconnecting to your body. And when I say reconnecting to your body, not just your physical part, but your emotional, your mental, and your energetic parts of you. Just being mindful of how you're doing and making sure you're staying balanced. So, those are kind of like my daily practices
Mm-hmm.
that I make sure I incorporate every single day, along with healthy eating habits, along with movement, just like making sure I'm getting out at least a little bit. And that obviously depends on where your body physically is at that point, because there was many times where my body was not able to move how I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But then some of the other practices, or I guess like techniques that I've tried that I would say have been successful, and are considered alternative practices, aside from meditation, which I do every day, I'm a big fan of breath work. So this kind of goes back to the four parts of the self. I think one thing I realized pretty early on with my autoimmune disease was that even when I was feeling good,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes my whole body wasn't feeling good. What I mean by that is sometimes I was feeling sad, or I was feeling like, busy thoughts were running around in my head. And I just never fully felt like I was just at ease, that I could just relax and be myself. So
Mm.
some of these techniques that I've really tried to focus on, I think align those four parts a little bit better. So breath work is a very intense mechanism. And I wish someone would have really explained that to me before I tried it the first time,
Mm-hmm.
because I was not prepared. But essentially, what you do is you want to be bringing in more oxygen than you're letting out. And so, what that happens is it gives your mind a chance to not to just go where it wants to go. So your subconscious comes in quite a bit, and it just allows you to connect with yourself, your inner self, on a deeper level. And so it's very uncomfortable. Your body has way more oxygen than it needs, and so you'll find everyone experiences it differently. But your fingers will tingle, or what happens to me is my lips will go numb, and it's like a very bizarre feeling. But it really is such a high. It's a very interesting experience, but I found at a certain point I needed to take the next step to just kind of go to my subconscious and turn off the thinking mind. So
Mm.
breath work has definitely been, I would say, the most alternative method that I've used. But nonetheless, I think, for those other parts of yourself has been very beneficial. And then I would say probably another important technique that I use less frequently,
Mm-hmm.
but I think depending on the person can be very beneficial, a lymphatic drainage massage. And essentially, for people who have inflammation, our toxins are stored in our body. It's stored in our body for everyone. And when you do this type of massage, it moves the toxins out of your body so that they can be released. And so that is really important for people who we want to get those toxins out even more so. Those toxins are more noticeable in people with these conditions than people that are considered healthy. And I'm realizing as I'm talking, kind of one thing that I haven't mentioned because it's just so integrated in my daily life that I kind of forget why I did it in the first place is intermittent fasting. So this is something that I would definitely recommend talking with a doctor, or if you have a nutritionist, talking with your nutritionist about, because everyone responds differently. And that is really my philosophy for all parts of healing is everyone will have a unique way of healing and a unique formula that works for them. And something that works for me might not work for someone else.
Right.
And that's for many, many reasons. But intermittent fasting for me has been monumental in my healing journey. And essentially, the very dumbed down version of why that is our cells repopulate quicker when you're in a fasting state.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if for the people who are suffering, for the people that have, essentially bad cells, you want them to repopulate quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's helped me monumentally. But again, I would highly recommend talking with a doctor if that's something you're interested in. Get more information about it from your doctor. They will help you possibly, depending on the type of doctor, put in like a good schedule. For me, I fast on the lower end. Women especially have to be extremely careful because our bodies just react differently to fasting than men. And so typically women have to fast for shorter periods of time. So I fast for 14 hours during the day, sometimes a little bit longer, but it's all about listening to your body. That's like one of my biggest philosophies as well, is just really making sure you're listening to your body.
Now, going back to the breath work, you said that it was very intense when you learned. Did you have to go to a practitioner for that, or how did you find out about it? Was it recommended to you by someone, or how'd you learn?
So, yeah, to be honest, it was recommended to me, but not, I guess, for healing purposes necessarily. I had heard about it kind of in connection with typical daily breath work, just connecting with your breath. And
Mhm.
I followed Wim Hof for a while. So, you know, kind of, I guess, like the more daily practices of breath work. And I wouldn't be surprised if people do this intense version more regularly. For me, it was so intense the first time I did it. And I found this lady online on Instagram
Mhm.
who she's based in Canada, but she offers virtual breathwork sessions.
Mm.
And so it's very easy. And she keeps kind of an eye on you. You have your camera on so that she can watch you, how you're breathing in and how you're breathing out.
Mhm.
Because like I said, it's intense. And so she just kind of keeps an eye on you with your video on and um, make sure that you're breathing and you're going through it okay.
Mhm.
And it's pretty easy in that sense. Like it's easy enough that it's something that you can do virtually.
Mhm.
But I do, it's on my to-do list. I want to, after this coronavirus is, done and we can proceed with being in person with people, I definitely want to do an in-person breath work because so far I've only done them virtually.
Well, I mean, and right now that's the perfect. I'm so glad that you did it, that you went ahead and did it, and didn't wait because it was so helpful for you. I think. I mean, I think you did the right thing, and now you know what you want to do more later. Nothing wrong with that. And
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
when you were talking about lymphatic draining, I've seen a lot of the tools, like the little jade rollers. Is that something that
Mm-hmm.
that you use for that? I think I've seen it in doing people at they do it on their face. Is there other places, or is it just on your face, or is it all lymph nodes?
So I'm not extremely familiar with the facial
Mhm.
lymphatic drainage. I know that that's the most popular
Mhm.
in kind of like a broad sense.
Mhm.
I actually have gone in to a massage practitioner, a
Mhm.
masseuse,
Mhm.
and gotten a full body lymphatic drainage massage.
Oh.
And it's really interesting. It's just slight sweeps on your body. It's very, very light because your lymph nodes are actually above your muscles. And so instead of, like a muscle massage
Mhm.
where they're getting into your muscles,
Mhm.
it's much, much lighter. And it's just like slight sweeping movements, trying to get the toxins through the body.
Mhm.
And so that's really what I've focused on. I do know that the facial lymphatic drainage massages are very, very popular. Unfortunately, I just don't have much knowledge in that beauty component.
Right. I mean, that's the only knowledge I had of it beforehand, other than in doing Tai Chi. My Tai Chi teacher taught me to do tapping, and they focus a lot on the lymph nodes in the armpits, which is really funny to tap your armpit, but
Mhm.
for that reason, just because it was good to drain stuff throughout your body. So that's my only
Yes,
knowledge
definitely.
of lymph nodes in that regard. But I think that's fascinating. I think it's so interesting, and what a nice alternative therapy that is something that you can do often. I like that a lot. Just another tool for your toolbox, right? I don't think, and I think that
Yes, exactly.
you having knowledge of that is so great for a patient to be able to connect them to all kinds of those tools, anything that works for them. I love your attitude about that. So
Yeah.
what qualities in yourself do you feel like make you a resilient person? I know that through your illness, it sounds like you've bounced back quite a bit by changing your behaviors and making sure that you got your treatment. But what qualities do you think? Are you a persistent person? Are you curious?
I think that I have this vision of how I should be feeling
Hmm.
and kind of like where I should be at in general. And I kind of realized many years ago, even before my conditions really got bad,
Hmm.
that I just wasn't even close to what I had been envisioning. Like I always wanted to feel good. And I would always like read and like online and listen to different videos and stuff about how to do that. But I didn't actually know how to take what I was learning and integrate it into my life.
Hmm.
And then when my conditions worsened and it actually, my case was kind of interesting. My body flipped not a 180, but pretty close overnight.
Whoa.
Um, where most people kind of have like a gradual change in their health, mine
Right.
was pretty drastic.
Huh.
My body basically shut down, and I was in the emergency room and fighting for my life for a little bit. And so I I just had to figure it out for myself.
Hmm.
And I do think that people want to believe that change is easy.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, change in any sense is not easy.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Right.
And so I think that's something that I've always understood to my core, that any change I do is going to be hard. I'm
Hmm.
going to try to make it as easy as I can on myself. And I'm going to follow through because I'm going to plan it out in a way that I can't fail. It
Mm.
might not, my end result might not be what I had in mind, but it's going to be better. And I really think that's all we can ask for is we, I think so often we forget that we always, always have the potential to feel slightly better. And that is, we have that capability to provide ourselves with that. And I think a lot of times when we're given a diagnosis, we're told by a doctor, this is how your life is going to be,
Mhm.
and live with it. And I don't believe in that. And I never have. When doctors would tell me that, I would say, well, you're telling everyone else that, but you don't know me and you don't know how hard I'm willing to work. And I think that really served me well, was working hard, making a plan, putting it into place. It's all about trial and error. I would try things. If it didn't work, I would try something else, but it was never, I'm going to try something and then I'm going to stop and I'm going to sit with this disease while it continues to really take control of my life. Like I didn't feel like I had control of my life.
So you didn't wait for a diagnosis per se before you started changing your mindset and being like, this isn't going to beat me. It sounds like
Yeah,
you had a,
that's actually a really good point.
so do you mind talking about your diagnosis, whatever that is or was?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's actually funny that you say that, because I've never really thought of it like that. But I think, when we're dealing with health problems, everything's kind of going around us at 100 miles an hour. And sometimes we look back on certain things, and I just have never really reflected on that piece. But I actually, right at the time that I really started to take control of my own health, I was working with a traditional medicine doctor. I wasn't getting the answers that I wanted. So I started doing all of my own research. I was spending hours every single day researching what other people have found would help them. And I don't mean what medicine or what, you know, supplement. I was looking for natural, holistic remedies. And I was coming across the same things over and over and over. I was coming across diet. I was coming across lifestyle shifts. And really, what I mean by lifestyle shifts, some people, and I am one of these people, I absolutely believe meditation has helped in my healing. And it's so much more than just sitting there with your thoughts. It's really a matter of like being able to slow down your life to a
Mhm.
point where you can be in control of your body and you can reconnect with your body and listen to the signals that your body is always giving you. And so, right around this time that I actually was doing my own research, I don't think it's any coincidence that this amazing doctor was kind of brought into my life. She was an integrative medicine doctor, and she was perfect for me because she had actually been in the traditional space for a little bit
Mhm.
and just kind of realized that patients weren't getting the answers that they were looking for, and there was a reason why. And so she was life changing for me, in more ways than one. But my diagnosis, you can kind of switch gears here and talk about that. So my diagnosis was a little bit anticlimactic, and what I mean is that I was I had been in the ER. I had had some of these crazy symptoms. Essentially, what led me to the ER was I had hives,
Mhm.
and I went into anaphylactic shock. And so
Wow.
I was rushed from an urgent care to the emergency room. I was given multiple EpiPens, which is pretty uncommon. Normally, one EpiPen will kind of do the job.
Right.
And it was a very, very scary time. Um, and I'm blanking on the type of hives I had, but essentially my swelling of my body, my joints, everything was so swollen. My lips, every part of my body was so swollen, that I was like unrecognizable in some senses. And
Wow.
so after that kind of scary, yeah, it was very, very scary. And after I kind of went through that, I was expecting this very dramatic diagnosis,
Right.
right? Because like
Yeah.
when we're going through these health problems, like you're just expecting like a name that really makes you feel like, yeah, that's what I'm going through, that
Yes.
awful name.
Oh, yes.
And then when I found out that I had Hashimoto's, I was
Mhm.
like, oh, it's just my thyroid. Like, I thought my whole body was failing, and my body was not operating well. But essentially, that's what I have. Is I have an underactive thyroid, and that's
Hmm.
really caused more problems than one. The biggest thing I've learned about this space, I was kind of confused in the beginning because most people I talked to, they had one autoimmune disease, they
Mhm.
had two or three.
Mhm.
And that didn't make a lot of sense to me in the beginning. I would think about it and be like, how are they so unlucky that they,
Right.
some people have zero, some
Right.
people have multiple.
Mhm.
What I've learned over time is if our bodies aren't operating and one part of our body is not operating in the way that it should,
Mhm.
that really leads to the whole body not operating as it should. And that leads to other problems.
Mm. Oh, that sounds like it was terrifying being in the ER and all of that. And I know what you mean, though. It's funny. Like when my doctor told me with my autoimmune disease, she's like, "So, do you want a diagnosis, or do you want a name, or do you want treatment?" And I was like, treatment." It was very, uh, yeah. I was like, could you just? I mean, it'd be great to know the name, but but so I'm really glad that they found out what it was. Now, you said that you had had symptoms earlier in your life. Did you have Hashimoto's symptoms then, like before?
They were different, yeah. So they were definitely different. I think the biggest red flag that I
Hmm.
should have noticed,
Hmm.
but I guess I should have, I don't want to say complained more about to my parents, but I should have been more vocal about how much discomfort I was in,
Hmm.
was how low my energy levels were when
Oh
I was
wow.
going throughout high school and
Uh-huh.
college.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like some days it would be so debilitating that I would be in class and almost fall asleep. And I have always been a good sleeper. Like,
Hmm.
no matter what stage of life I'm in, I have always been a 7 to 8 hour girl, sometimes nine. And so it wasn't like I was just not getting enough sleep.
Hmm.
My levels were off. And I think when I was younger, when I was in high school, it was attributed to, oh, this is normal for teenagers.
Hmm.
I think maybe a little bit that can be
Oh
true.
yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think that right. I think, my levels, how tired I was all the time, how low energy, that was not normal.
Hmm. Right. Like hindsight is 2020 kind of thing. Like, yeah, of course. Hell, it
Hmm.
makes sense. So what kinds of things
Exactly.
I love that you said that you have self-care as a mandatory part of your day. So is there one out of all of your methods of self-care that you think is the most important? Is it meditation or is it breath work? Like what's your one thing that your day wouldn't be complete unless you did?
I would have to say journaling. I think, and this is why, I think, the biggest thing I've learned throughout my journey is that we have to be our own person for everything, a little bit at least. We have to be a little bit of our own doctor. And what I mean by that is your doctor will give you instructions, but you have to be in charge of doing it. You have to be in charge of keeping in mind and just remembering what's working, what's not. That's your responsibility. Unfortunately, a doctor's help stops at the doctor's office and then it's on you.
Hmm.
And I kind of think, you know, there's different, I guess, I think therapy can be a little bit controversial.
Hmm.
Everyone has their own opinions about
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
I personally think like everyone can be a little bit of their own therapist. When we're running at 100 miles an hour every single day, I think it's so easy to just brush things under the rug and be like, that's a normal thought, or I'm fine,
Right.
keep going, push
Right.
through it.
Yes.
And our bodies, our minds, everything, we're constantly given these signals and we're not listening to them. So I personally think that journaling, if I could pick two, I would pick meditation and journaling. If I
Mm.
just had to pick one, I would pick journaling. And I do it in a way that it's not just spilling out my thoughts. I think that's great. And that is where I had started with journaling many years ago, is I would just write, how am I doing? What's going on in my life? And that was great. That was still very effective for me.
Mhm.
Now I have a little bit more of a constructive approach, I would say. It's a little bit more of like a structure to my journaling practice. And what I do is I sit down and I ask myself, how are you feeling? How am I feeling today? And it's funny because sometimes what happens is I'll wake up in the morning and I'll kind of jump out of bed and be like, oh, today's a great day. I'm feeling good. Like I got a good night of sleep. The sun is out. I'm
Mhm.
feeling good. And then
Mhm.
I'll sit down with myself and I'll get quiet for just a second. I'll close my eyes and I'll ask, how am I feeling today? Sometimes, this is not very often, but sometimes I'll be hit with such a strong emotion like, you are tired. You are feeling overworked. And so, kind of
Mhm.
my journaling process, I take myself through, why am I feeling, why did this come on all of a sudden? I jumped out of bed. I was feeling good. Why is there this inner voice that's telling me I'm tired and overworked? And a lot of times, I think what happens, in my case at least,
Mhm.
I jump out of bed and it's like adrenaline. Just because I was feeling good for a minute doesn't mean that my energy levels were 100% that day.
Mhm.
And so I think journaling has just kind of allowed me to like really dig through, connect with myself on a deeper level, and
Mhm.
really make sure that I'm in a good place at the start of every day.
Oh, I love that. I love that you're really listening to yourself. And it sounds like that's a really important part of your daily routine. Are you otherwise like a routine driven person, or you're kind of like a more seat of your pants kind of person, like with your daily stuff?
So I actually have learned to be a little bit less of a routine person
Hmm.
over the years. I think at a certain point in my life, probably a year or two before I started experiencing the really serious part of my condition,
Hmm.
I was so routine that I was ignoring how I was feeling.
Mm.
And it kind of goes back to that thing I was saying earlier is, sometimes I think we want our lives to go on pause. Like we want everything to be paused and just like live our lives how we want.
Right.
And there's times where I would love my routine to be so structured every single day. But there is still life going on around us.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not possible. And
Right.
I've really found that with when you have health problems, force is the last thing you ever want to do. And so I try to do the same things most days.
Hmm.
But if something else comes up, or if I'm not feeling well, or if I didn't sleep well the night before, really, most things, I am fine to adjust
Hmm.
my what I would call routine.
Hmm.
And so I do kind of have, like you said before, which I think is exactly how I describe it. I have my tools in my toolkit. If I were in a perfect world, it was just me and, I got a great night of sleep every night, every single day was the same,
Hmm.
then naturally, as someone who gravitates more towards routine, I would be all for it. Like every single day, I would start, the
Right.
same way every single
Right.
day.
Hmm.
But I've definitely learned to go easy on myself as time has gone on.
Oh, that's so smart. And it's part of listening to yourself too, is adjusting.
Hmm.
And especially right now, we all should be a lot kinder to ourselves in this time of unrest. So, are you the kind of person who allows themselves to have things like small pleasures? I'm like a huge coffee person. I have to have coffee every day. I I really like. I'm gluten free, but I have to say I do really like almonds. Like what's your small pleasure or thing that makes you happy? Small gift that you can give yourself. Is there something like that you do for yourself every day?
So I am so glad you brought this up, actually, because I think this is so overlooked, unfortunately. When I first went through my healing journey and really tried to work with doctors, but focused on, healing myself, like empowering myself
Hmm.
and reminding myself that I have the capability to heal.
Hmm.
I was using everything that the doctors were telling me to do, and I was going 110% with it. And
Yep.
initially, and I guess I should probably walk through some of the things that I had done,
Hmm.
but I was told, to take things really easy and, do a lot of like have a ton of rest. And
Hmm.
really, my doctor wanted me to be working from home for a little bit, just so I can kind of reconnect with my body and like just really let my body have a bit of a break. It had been through so much.
Hmm.
And I was put on this, um, it's essentially, it was I guess paleo, not to a T,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
very much paleo like. And I stuck with those things so hard. I was not doing anything with my life. Like the highlight of my life for weeks was going on one walk a day outside. I was sticking so close to this diet that I was seeing so much benefit physically, but mentally, I was a disaster.
Mm.
And I struggled with it because I just, again, like it goes back to my small changes.
Mhm.
I, I don't know. I think I tried to take too much on at one time and my mind freaked out, my emotions freaked out.
Right.
Energetically, I was a mess.
Mhm.
And so that did not work out very well for me. So now it's taken a lot of trial and error. Again, like that's a big part of my approach to healing is finding what works for you.
Mhm.
For me, that looks something like an 80/20.
Mm.
80% of the time, I have my foods that I know are going to nourish me. They're going to help my body as a whole fight my inflammation.
Mhm.
And they're overall just going to make me feel good.
Right.
So I really focus on those foods. 80% of the time.
Mhm.
The other 20% of the time, I let myself live a little.
Right.
But I do want to say one thing that I think has helped me immensely has been I have hard no's. I
Mhm.
have things that I just will not allow myself to treat on
Mhm.
at any point.
Mhm.
And when I say that out loud, it's funny because how I'm saying it is actually in direct opposition of how I view it in my mind. For so long, I had looked at it as I'm not allowed to have these things.
Mhm.
And I would go to my doctor and I would say, well, this was a really hard week because I was with friends and they were all having pizza and I can't have pizza. And, I was kind of getting worked up. And she would constantly remind me, focus on the things you can have,
Mhm.
not the things you can't have.
Mhm.
And I always was like, okay, like it wasn't clicking until I started helping people. And now I'm like, I get it. I totally get what she was saying. I kind of adopted that mindset on my own without the, ta-da type
Right.
click.
Right.
But it really is about focusing every single day on all the things that you're grateful for, all the things you can have in your life, all the things you can eat. And then the things that you can't eat, they become so, it just doesn't even matter anymore. I don't, some of my hard no's are gluten and dairy.
Mhm.
I really focus on cutting out refined sugar. That one I'm a little bit more lenient on. I have not had gluten and dairy in years.
Mhm.
And I honestly, it's not even when other people are eating pizza in front of me now, they always kind of look over at me and they're like, I'm sorry, or do you wish you could have some of this?
Gosh,
And
yes.
I'm like,
They do that to
no,
me. Yes.
I am fine. I am totally okay. And if there was ever a time I feel and that we didn't have to, but that we were gluten and dairy free or we were having these diet restrictions, the time is now. I mean, there are so many more options. Even from a few years ago when I first started all of this,
Mhm.
there's so many more options now that I'm almost like, it's I am fine. I am not missing out. Like my mindset has really shifted.
Mhm. Oh, you're right. It's not a scarcity thing. It's not I liked what you said about
Exactly.
like it's more yes, I'm not eating this, but it's on purpose. It's not like accidental. I'm not doing this because it hurts me
Right.
otherwise.
And it's for a reason.
Right.
Mhm.
But I totally get that too. I feel my family is always like, "We're so sorry." And I'm like, "It's okay." Every once in a while, but like I said, I still have my coffee, but other than that, it's the little things. Whatever works for you, right? That's
Mhm.
So do you have any
Exactly. We all have to find a way to push forward.
Yes. Yes, 100%. Do you have any books that you recommend to people that are starting a healthier lifestyle journey? Any books or websites, things that you would recommend to other people?
Oh my goodness. I have so many. I honestly don't even know where to start. I think I think the biggest thing is to this isn't a direct answer to your question, but if I were going back and I were to redo a couple things, if I could, restart my journey, this is kind of the educational route I would take. I would find some things that I was interested in trying and supplementing my medical care with.
Mhm.
And I would research them a little bit and I would bring them to my doctor and see if it was safe
Mhm.
for me to do those things.
Oh, yes. So
And
smart.
then I would try to integrate myself as much in these support communities as I could. What I mean by that is, I really took it upon myself. I constantly felt like I was fighting on my own.
Mhm.
Even though I had a doctor, like I felt like my family was there, they were supporting me. My boyfriend has been the most amazing resource, but I still felt like it was my fight to fight
Mhm.
and that other people who were struggling didn't have time to help me. And now that I'm in the space where I'm helping people, I see all these amazing people who are struggling so much, but they are supporting each other. They're supporting others who are also struggling, and they are learning so much just from other people's stories. I mean, just it's actually crazy. And this is a perfect example of all this. Within just the last 6 months or so, I've really tried integrating myself into these Facebook groups, connecting with similar people on Instagram and Facebook, and really trying to just connect and create like some sort of community for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And within the last couple months, I have started experiencing pretty bad dry, itchy scalp. And it's been pretty miserable. It's something that I never dealt with growing up. I never had dandruff, never had any of that. And so it's really kind of like been concerning to me, just because I can't get into a doctor right now.
Right.
And so I've done a ton of my own research. I've like looked into what books to buy and all this stuff. And then it kind of dawned on me, I was like, I should be reaching out to my people, to the
Mm-hmm.
people I've connected with.
Mm-hmm.
So I reached out to the Facebook groups I'm part of. I reached out to a couple people on Instagram. Lo and behold, today, this girl that I'm friends with on Instagram posts this amazing video. She creates her own dry, itchy scalp formula with apple cider vinegar.
Yes.
And yeah, and I was just like, it was something that I was like, oh my gosh, I could have saved myself hours of research by just reaching out to the people who are also going through this
Right.
and might have just like a little bit better of an idea than
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know it's not a direct answer to your question, but if I had to go through this again, I spent so much time doing my own research. And I do think that there's a place for that. I think the biggest, I would say the biggest area I went wrong was not being more involved in my health at the time,
Mm-hmm.
just because I felt like I didn't have enough time to like fully understand Hashimoto's as my doctor was giving me a regimen.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was already time consuming enough to go to the doctor, to go to the lab test,
Mm-hmm.
to try to figure out my nutrition on my own, to try to figure out my lifestyle on my own. And then on top of that, to be like researching what is Hashimoto's. Like I just was really like listening to my doctor and like letting that be. And I just think the more people that you can talk to that are also kind of in a similar place or have been through that place, the smallest bit of advice can save you so much
Mm-hmm.
frustration,
Mm-hmm.
time, energy, everything.
Oh, that's such an excellent point. I mean, that's part of why I started this show. Is I was always afraid of I was afraid of my own diagnoses, and I didn't like I almost stuck my head in the sand, and I didn't want to learn about them or learn about anybody else who had them, and I didn't, I wanted to be a magical unicorn by myself, but it wasn't helpful. I just, sat in my own misery. And then as soon as I ended up starting to talk to people who had similar things, it was just so mind-blowing. So I think that's an excellent point that we aren't in this alone, and to find people who can help. I mean, that's an amazing resource. I think that's a wonderful point. I like that. So I just have a couple more questions. I didn't ask you. This is just a funny question, but I always ask my interviewees if they have pets. Are you a person who has pets in your life?
Oh, yes. I am a massive, massive dog lover.
Oh.
I have my own name for dogs. They're
Mhm.
not dogs, they are moose. And where that name comes from, and moose as in Mooff, where
Uh-huh.
that name comes from is like muffins, like they're little muffins, but then
Uh-huh.
it went to muff and then it went to moose. So I am a massive dog lover. When I was really, really young, all I wanted in my life was a dog. I wanted one so bad. I would walk my neighbor's dogs
Uh-huh.
every single day, free of charge, just so I could like play with their dogs.
Oh.
And my parents always, my sister and I always had a lot going on with sports and stuff. And my parents were like, we don't have time. We're like, you guys aren't going to take care of the dogs. So we just can't invest in, the time right now. And so then, of course, like 2 years, I think I was a junior in high school, my parents got me a little Maltese Yorkie mix.
Hmm.
And I will remember that day for the rest of my life. Like, she was the best gift I've ever been given. It was such a fun time in my life. And I so since then, I've had a couple pets in college, just like roommates and friends have
Hmm.
had that. And I was always like, oh, one day I'll get a dog, one day. Like, it was always, it really is such a commitment,
Yeah.
both financially, but also just with like your time. Like, they take a lot of time. But now I have a French bulldog, and he is the love of my life. He is
Oh,
perfect in every way.
I love it. What's his name?
Wrigley. It's so he's I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with French bulldogs, but they're very much like little pigs. They snort, they snore, they just breathe really loud. He eats
Oh,
like a pig, like he's just all around like very pig like.
uh-huh.
And so his nickname is Rig the Pig.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing. I love that. That's cool. And I also
He's
really,
pretty cute.
oh, that's adorable. And I think that for a lot of people who have chronic illness, having a pet can add so much. I've read studies, it adds so much to your life, even when you can't necessarily verbalize what's wrong. I feel like my animals know, and they give you comfort in a different kind of way. Especially like you said, if you're incapacitated for a certain amount of time, it's nice to have an animal that can just wordlessly help you. I think that's great. I like that.
Hmm.
Now,
Totally.
I'm going.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead.
so. I think I was just going to say, kind of on that topic,
Uh huh.
I could not agree more. I A big foundation of my philosophy on healing
Hmm.
is really around feeling good.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's the things that we just completely overlook
Hmm.
that make us feel good.
Hmm.
And pets is totally one of them. I think you hit that right on the head. It's like everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people have a pet. And I think we just overlook how happy they make us. And that sensation of feeling good is so important for our overall health, including physical health. I mean, there's so many benefits when you feel good emotionally for your physical health.
Yeah. So, what's next for you? Do you have any projects on the horizon? Anything that we can plug here on the show?
So I am now taking clients. I'm taking one on one clients for my autoimmune lifestyle coaching program. And
Mhm.
I think my end goal is to really have projects that I can, or I guess programs that I can put together, between like 6, maybe 9 week programs
Mhm.
that can help more of the masses.
Mhm.
And it's, I think that term gets kind of scary because I am the first person to believe there is no blanket solution for health. Everyone has their own unique formula.
Mhm.
But I really do think I'm finding the same things are missing across most people with that are suffering with these autoimmune diseases.
Mhm.
And it's stuff like they're not getting enough sleep, or their doctor told them to eat a certain way and cut out certain foods or to try an elimination diet. And they want to,
Mhm.
but something's holding them back. Like, they just can't do it. And I think that's really my end goal, is to be able to put together a, a program where, I still want to continue one on one coaching, but that people can really take this and they can, take this small little book and they can kind of go back to the basics and make sure that they are doing the foundation work, laying a good foundation for good health.
Oh, that's so important. Now we're going to have your information on the show notes, but could you also talk about your Instagram handle or your website right now so that people can hear it and write it down?
Yes, definitely. So my Instagram handle is Jess, Jess underscore Stancil, Stancil. And the website is still in the works. I've really been focusing on my Instagram, and basically the kind of what you'll find there is just lots of tips, like lots of free value. I'm providing a lot of the content that I am using in my program,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm giving it to you for free.
Whoa.
And it's really just because I want people to start feeling better now, today. Like, I don't want them to have to pull out their credit card and pay me before they start feeling better. Like, my number one goal is to empower people to take control of their lives and live vibrantly with autoimmune diseases. So I really want them to know and truly feel that I'm on their team and the power is all theirs. Like, they can start feeling better right now.
Oh, gosh, it's so needed and so important. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me. This was such a good conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So, as I said, we're going to have all of Jessica's links to her Instagram, so you'll be able to see that and see how you can contact her so that you can be a client or get some of her great free resources.
Sometimes we have to start over. Sometimes we have to fight back. Sometimes it's all too much. Lost inside the black. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Sometimes we need to lift the voices of those who've overcome and expose the ones that made the choices to stay and fight, not run. Our stories are